All right, folks, back here on Inside Analysis, talking all about AI and the impact on technologies on businesses, on business models. And next up, we have a fascinating gentleman, Josh Gould. He is with a company called The Big Word. They've been doing translation services for a long, long time. And he just told me an amazing story about how in 1998, last millennium, there was a technological advance that disrupted their business model tremendously, slashing massive amounts of revenue, and they really had to scratch their heads and figure out what to do. But they got through that, and now, of course, we have AI, and of course, AI can translate all kind of stuff. That's where a lot of these models actually came from, was from the world of natural language processing and translations. And so they do translations very well. But Josh, I'll throw it over to you. You apparently have a pretty good strategy for how to, I was sort of half joking, tack into the wind, to use the sailor's metaphor, and figure out how you can leverage this disruption to provide better services, to keep your clients happy, and even get more headcount. Tell us all about that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, in 1998, there was a release of a product called Translation Memory. And we used to translate a lot of product manuals for the manufacturing industry. So, if you were buying a Honda car in the 90s, it's probably translated by the big word when you looked for your manual. And we would get these huge manuals, they would come in and we would charge per word. And what happened when translation memory came out is you could then reuse it was a database and it would work out whether you had translated that segment in the past. And then it would look at whether the segment was in context or not.
Hmm.
And what transpired from this technology is that 70% of our revenue would just disappear overnight.
Wow.
And this isn't recent, this is in the 90s. And
Right.
there was a big argument within our management team on do we go to Honda and tell them that we're using this technology, um, or do we keep the 70% cost saving for ourselves and make a lot of money while the party is going on, but realize that the party will end? And ultimately, we decided that if we don't tell them, one of our competitors will. So we had
Right.
no choice. We had to go to Honda and say, listen, we're applying translation memory, and 70% of all the words that you send us roughly have already been done before. And they need a review, but they don't necessarily need translation. And we're going to give you a 90% discount on that 70% of words.
Well.
Now, we had just bought the company that actually had Honda as a client as well. So we'd taken a lot of debt to buy this company and we were pretty scared. But what transpired is Honda was only doing a tiny fraction of all the translation that it needed to do because it just didn't have the budget for it. And what it really wanted to do was the shop manuals for the training for all the engineers. It wanted to do all of the feedback from customers from English and Dutch into Japanese so they could understand it. And the following year, our business grew by, every 18 months for 5 years after, the business doubled in size.
Wow.
And we thought it was to use a very British term, we thought it was curtains for us when that technology came out.
Right.
And what we actually had to do in order to realize that growth, we had to provide the wraparound services. And if I don't know how old you are, Eric, you don't look like you would have been in tech in those days, but if you were, you'll know that content management systems were in their infancy in the late 90s, but they came around 2001 to 2005. CMSs became all the rage, and
Right.
there was and they weren't really running websites. They were actually where people would write manuals in and
Right.
and author all
Right.
sorts of content.
Yeah.
But some of it would actually go into print, and some of it would go in, into the dot-com boom websites. So the first thing we did was we started integrating into all the big ones. So that we could sell an API, and we had to explain what an API was. And I remember you said, like, we're building a pipeway into the back end of your content management system. We're going to suck all that content out. We're going to translate it. We're going to put it all back, and you won't even do anything. Like, you'll just see it appear. And you're going to
Wow.
pay us a word rate, but you're going to pay us about 30% of what you used to pay us.
Wow.
And, all these people thought, great, as long as you don't go past my budget.
Right.
So that was the first thing we did. The second thing is we would sell editing, proofreading, typesetting. So no longer were we just a translation company, we're going to typeset everything. And we started hiring media service people. We were going to bring in subtitling, dubbing, editing. So as e-learning started to explode in the early 2000s, we could start taking these SCORM packages in with lots of tags and code. And then we could re-engineer the files to extract all the text and run it through this, very early stage AI.
Wow.
That was their first part. And we thought we had cracked it. We're now a tech company. We're not an agency. And then in around 2013, Google popularized neural network AI. And their first big program in neural network AI was machine translation, so really known as neural machine translation. And this took like what we were doing, but it made it more natural. And you didn't actually have to have previously translated content because it was using what we call corpora, which is the same as large language model, like a ChatGPT, but it's not large language. You're actually having to go and find and buy content to tune the AI with.
Hmm.
And Google could do this at scale. And again, we are in the meeting room thinking, how are we going to survive this? I mean, we're testing it and it's pretty good. And, it might not be 100% as good as a human, but we built some algorithms and it's like 90% of the way there and it's free.
Wow.
So anyway, it turned out that it isn't really free. It cost Google a lot of money to do. And, you could do 5,000 characters free and then it's expensive. So again, we had to rethink our business and our business strategy. And at that point, we expanded into all the multimedia services in a much bigger way. Um, and we saw exactly the same thing repeat, that people would spend huge amounts more money if they could get easy and simple access to the products and services.
Hmm.
And there was some research done that said you were 97% more likely to buy a product if you could read the product description in your own language, in your mother tongue, even if you spoke English. And 2013 was really the coming of age of e-learning. So again, that exploded. It was also a time when private equity started to really come of age, and they wanted all their research reports in different languages. So with every technology shift, there's usually an explosion in demand.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
interesting.
and again, we rode that wave, but we also decided to go. This was translation, which is the written word. We also decided to expand into the spoken word and look at mission critical uses of it. So hospitals, police stations, prisons, court systems, military, where 90% accuracy wasn't good enough. It had to be 100% as good as a human.
Right.
So again, and now large language models have come along. We implemented LLMs into our workflows in 2022 in a significant way. We implemented 16 different LLMs into our workflows. We built AI to figure out uh, which AI translator is better for when and to tune them. And so the 16 engines, each engine has about 30 different specialisms. And each
Wow.
specialism has around about 100 different language pairs that it's good at doing. So there's literally over 1 billion different combinations, and we use AI to figure out how to essentially get the most out of AI translation, and we can sell that at a premium. The unit rate comes down again, and all of a sudden, people still have the budget. They still need to get things and content translated. And margins typically go up as a unit rate. But people keep asking me, how am I going to survive? How am I going to survive? And the funny thing is, it it's easy to theoretically game it out, but it almost has to happen for you to figure it out. As I
Yeah.
say.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I came up with an analogy I mentioned to our last guest as well. I'll just get your thoughts on this. That Gen AI in particular and its prevalence, the fact that it's ubiquitous now, it kind of reminds me of, in terms of enterprise Gen AI, it reminds me of a final exam that was issued halfway through the semester. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, wait a minute, I thought we had more time to get ready for this. It's like, nope, do it now. And like, wait, oh no. And that's the pressure that's on organizations right now to figure this out. But you still, to your point, you could have gained it out in your head. It doesn't matter until the bell rings. When the bell rings, that's reality, boots on the ground. What are we going to do? You have to adapt. You have to pay attention to what you're doing and where these technologies filter in and can help you do things better. And then just be honest with your clients. I mean, that's the part I like about your stories, that you had a chance to take a big profit and said, no, let's do the right thing, because besides, anyway, we'd get caught if we didn't, or would likely get caught, right? So you did the right thing and it paid off. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, imagine if you could listen to this podcast in any language, you could read the transcription in any language, it's all in real time. And at the end of the podcast, you get a chat bot that's been tuned by the podcast itself. You can ask questions. But we don't really have to imagine because it exists today. The big
Wow.
word, the company that I'm CEO of, sells those products and services. Now, these unit rates, people expect a lot of this for free. But imagine then you can upgrade to a slightly better version, a human-tuned version. And that's why it explodes, because there's 8 billion people walking the planet, most of whom cannot communicate with each other.
Right.
And at least not in their mother tongue. So AI is going to allow us to do it, and it's going to take us to the next level. But people ask me, well, what does it mean to your translators and interpreters? Well, I can tell you, every time we incorporate AI into the business, we end up having a boom, and we have way more translators, way more interpreters than we did in the prior year and the prior year to that. Same
Wow.
way in farming, right? The farmers thought when the combine harvester was invented, there'll be no need for farmers. Well, we have more farmers today than we did back in those days. Why? Because food became cheap and people ate more. They had more babies. And as of today, there's more farmers than there were 200 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, we tend to rise to the occasion, I think, is another way to look at this, right? And it is a new tool, it is a new technology, it is very powerful. These models are very powerful. Now, that doesn't mean using them is going to guarantee success, but not using them is going to almost guarantee failure. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, here's my takeaway. When I do podcasts, I try and give people one thing to learn from.
There you go.
Uh, and AI itself doesn't usually give value. You know, if you go on ChatGPT, you're probably getting value and you're probably not paying for it. But for companies like us, are the big word, and for most companies, you've got to find the services that wrap around the AI. You can't just take a ChatGPT API and then just resell it at a premium.
Right.
So I encourage all businesses to think about where you're adding the value, because in the dot-com boss, the reason it wasn't the internet that was broken, it was that most companies didn't add any value. They were just piggybacking on, on the internet. So the way I look at AI today and the way I looked at it in the late 90s is exactly the same. What ecosystem can I build around this new technology that people want to pay for, that actually solves a problem and isn't a solution looking for a problem to solve.
Right. That's funny. And that's what you do get from some of the traditional VC-backed technology. Someone gets all excited. Well, Joshua, it's been wonderful talking to you, folks. Look this gentleman up online, Joshua Gould. That's Gould. Go to the website, thebigword.com, eradicating the final barrier of global communication. I love it. Can't we all just get along? Yes, we can if we can communicate. Most problems stem from miscommunication. Most, not all, but most. But look these gentlemen up online, and we'll talk to you in a minute where you're listening to Inside Analysis.